How does a deep divide get created within a group of people? That's what this episode is about. You're listening to Pure Light, where we explore how you can believe in yourself and be happy with who you are. My name is Ailey. I help people do what they feel called to do. I'm a coach, writer, and yoga and meditation teacher. This is episode 144. In the last episode, I talked about the upheaval in the Kundalini community earlier this year, when a book came out that accused Yogi Bhajan, the man who brought this yoga to the West, of rape and manipulation. That memoir led to a lot more survivors coming forward and sharing their stories of abuse. So I've talked about processing the pain of all of that. In this episode, I want to talk about how that led to fragmentation within the Kundalini community. So several years ago, I did a level 2 teacher training in Kundalini yoga. It was the Authentic Relationships course. My level 1 teacher, Satdaram, was co-leading the course with Guru Charan, who's in charge of the curriculum for all of the Kundalini yoga teacher trainings. The first 2 days of the course, Satdaram was there on her own. And on the second morning, we watched a video of Yogi Bhajan. It was one of his lectures. Yogi Bhajan lectures are often shown during Kundalini teacher trainings, or at least they have been in the past. So the videos are of lectures and classes that he taught to his students. And so in them, he talks, he guides meditations, he teaches yoga sets, and he also interacts with the students. There's often a large group of people there, and often they're dressed just like him. They're wearing white, they're wearing turbans. And in this particular lecture, Yogi Bhajan was talking to a woman, and he was being really harsh. I don't remember what he said, but I do remember that he was basically shaming her in front of the crowd. And I remember being like, what the fuck? Because this wasn't like him asking her to be respectful or be quiet or sit down. It felt mean and manipulative. It felt like he had a lot of anger. And it was so disturbing to me that the entire time that I was watching it, I was like, why the fuck are we watching this? And then when we went for lunch right after that, I was sitting in a restaurant with a friend from the course, and I was like, I don't know if I can keep doing this. I don't know if I can keep practicing Kundalini. I don't know if I can keep teaching Kundalini. Because the behavior that I saw in the video was so far out of alignment with what was being taught in the course. And I felt like watching that video was a complete waste of time. Like it was a waste of my life for the duration of the video. When we got back from lunch, there was one guy who was in the course because he was there with his girlfriend. They wanted to work on their relationship. So he wasn't part of the Kundalini community. This was his first experience of Kundalini yoga. And he put up his hand and he was like, I thought this course was about building strong relationships based on love and respect. Like, that's why I signed up. That's why I'm here. That's what I want to build. And what I saw in the video was not that. So now I'm wondering if I'm in the right place or if I should leave and like if I'll get my money back. And I was blown away by the fact that he said that, because even though I was basically thinking the same thing, it didn't occur to me to say anything. And anyway, my teacher, Satdaram, was like, well, let's talk about this. So she facilitated a discussion about the video and what people thought about it and how they felt about it. And then she was like, well, Guru Charan manages the curriculum for KRI, which is the Kundalini Research Institute. So she was like, let's do a vote and see if the majority think it should be taken out. And then if that's the case, we can tell him tomorrow when he gets here. So we did a vote. There were probably, 20 or 30 people in the room, and everyone was in rows on yoga mats on the floor. So when she asked who thinks we should keep the video, most people put their hands up. I did not. When she asked who thinks the video should be taken out, I put up my hand, and so did the guy who spoke up, and so did maybe a handful of other people. So a few people did, but it was really the minority. And I was sitting in the back row, and someone in the corner in the back, when the people who thought it should be taken out had their hands up, was like looking at each person and pointing and asking, are you a Kundalini teacher? Are you a Kundalini teacher? Are you a Kundalini teacher? And when she asked me, I was like, yeah, I am. And I found that really interesting because she was asking in a very accusatory tone. It was almost as if to say, if you're on this path, you shouldn't think for yourself. Like you shouldn't have an opinion that differs from the master. And anyway, the video didn't get voted out, but it probably softened the blow a bit at least for me, when the news came out about the accusations against Yogi Bhajan earlier this year, which a third party later investigated and found to be true. So it wasn't shocking to me when the news came out. It was painful and disappointing and a lot to process, but it wasn't totally unexpected. So going back to the moment that we took the vote, there were a variety of perspectives in the room, and they were polarizing. Some people were like, that was horrible. Who cares if it came from Yogi Bhajan? It doesn't belong in a course on authentic relationships. And then there were other people who believed that Yogi Bhajan could do no wrong, and everything he did or said should be respected and revered, and his teachings should be obeyed. And then there's an entire continuum between the two. There's like a full spectrum. The woman asking, are you a Kundalini teacher, probably fell to the extreme end of Yogi Bhajan could do no wrong. She was probably like at one end of that perspective. And some people were like, yeah, it wasn't the best, but it wasn't horrible. It had some good stuff in it. And it's Yogi Bhajan, so we should listen. But whatever beliefs people had about Yogi Bhajan going into this informed their perspective. It determined how they looked at his behavior in the video. Because if you watch it thinking he's the master, do not question him, you're going to have a certain perspective on the video. And if you think Yogi Bhajan's an asshole and you're like, don't listen to him, you're going to have a very different perspective on the video. So if you hold either of those beliefs, that'll affect the perspective you take on the video. And it'll also inform how you look at people who hold the opposite perspective. Because if you think you're right, it means that you also think other people are wrong. And that somehow you're better than others because of your opinion. So it fuels a sense of superiority. It fuels your ego. I didn't really have a strong perspective on Yogi Bhajan either way. I was more weirded out by how people saw him than anything. So I was more like, what is this video really teaching me? So you could also look at this all with an open mind, like, does this teaching actually demonstrate the behavior that he's claiming to teach? So when the book came out this year, the Kundalini community split into a couple of camps. There were people who believed the victims and survivors without evidence. This was before the report came out. And then there were also people who believed that Yogi Bhajan could do no wrong and that people were just trying to ruin his reputation. There were also some people who changed their minds, who were like, I've heard rumors of this kind of stuff before, and I can't ignore that any longer. I now believe that Yogi Bhajan isn't who I thought he was. There were people who were like, I'm never doing Kundalini again. There were people who were like, I'm burning all my Kundalini books. And then there were also people who were like, how dare you insult my teacher? And people who attacked the reputation of the author of the book. And that created what seems to be a great divide, at least online. It's hard to say how it'll play out because there haven't been any big festivals this year because of COVID. So I'm not really sure what impact this will have to events that are in person. But in the online world, it does seem like there's this polarization in the community. And it all stems from the underlying beliefs held by each individual. Because the perspective that you take is going to determine how you interpret what happens. And your level of identification with that perspective will also determine the extent to which you judge others who don't share your perspective. And it'll also determine the potential for connection and respect for their humanity that you have. When you're deeply identified with a perspective and you judge others who don't share the same views, you contribute to polarization. I'll also say this, when you value other people's humanity, you create space for healing. May we all find that within ourselves and within each other. Thanks so much for listening. Until next time, may you be guided by your light.